In this video, I want to talk with you about why etiology matters. In the last week, I've been sharing with you about the afflictions that God's been sending to my body and what he's been teaching me in the process and what my process of receiving him based on what I understand of him that he has established, how I've been receiving that from him and how my ability to learn from him correlates with the remission of symptoms. Why does it correlate with the remission of symptoms? Because God doesn't send grief willingly, and he will relent once the lesson is learned. Now let's talk about the word etiology. All that means is, where did it come from? What is the origin? What is the cause of what you're experiencing? And why would that matter to you? Why would it matter to you what the cause is of your symptoms? Well, because if you have believed in a lie regarding the causes of your symptoms, then the solution is also going to be a lie, isn't it? You're not going to have any understanding. If you believe that the reason why you have a cough is because you stepped on a worm on the sidewalk, yeah, that sounds ridiculous, but you got to consider some of the ridiculous things that we believe from the world regarding where our symptoms come from. We believe as Christians that God is our creator. We believe that he has a sovereign plan. We claim that we believe in his word, and yet we miss everything that he has established regarding the etiology of what he alone in his sovereignty sends in our lives. So yeah, it's about as ridiculous as saying that because I stepped on a worm, I got a cough today. And now I need to collect all the worms on my block so that I don't step on another worm this week. If you don't understand the cause, you're not going to understand the solution. Now let's talk about what God has established regarding the etiology of what he sends. First thing he established is that he sent plagues to the Egyptians, but he didn't send them to his people. So in his sovereignty, he could pick and choose who he was going to send these things to. And it just so happens that he sent those plagues to the Egyptians because they were disobeying and because Pharaoh refused to let his people go so that they could worship him. And it just so happens that in Exodus 15:26, he said, if you obey me and everything that I have established, I won't send those plagues that I sent on the Egyptians onto you. I am the Lord who heals you. He's establishing etiology, isn't he? He's helping us to understand where those plagues came from, him in his sovereignty, why those plagues had a purpose, he was dealing with them, and that in his sovereignty, he has the ability to keep you from getting plagues. And that in his sovereignty, he also has the ability to give you a plague because you have disobeyed. And in Leviticus 13, he began to teach the people that if you have a rash on your skin or a mold in your house, you are to go to the priest at the temple. He's going to take down what symptoms you have. Then you're going to go in isolation. Well, what does isolation mean? Well, he had already established what isolation meant. Isolation during Passover was you invoke the blood of the lamb over your door, you go inside of your house, you rid your house of yeast representing sin, and you isolate. Isolation has always represented return to God. And it just so happens that he says, return to me and I will heal you. So all of these things are formulating a picture regarding etiology, not only etiology, but the sovereignty of a God who is intentional about what he's doing with his people. So that person who had the rash was to go into isolation for 7 days. When they came out, the priest would then take a look at the list that he wrote in the beginning, and he would see if anything had changed in terms of that person's symptoms. Was it staying the same? Was it getting better? Or was it getting worse? If it was getting better, they would go back into isolation and finish what the Lord started. 7 more days of isolation, continue to receive from him. If it was not getting better or it remained the same, you understand, we're not supposed to remain the same when we're in him. We are supposed to be changed and on an upward trajectory of growth. If that were the case, they would be cast out of the camp and they would not be allowed to return back into the camp until they demonstrated that they were healing. Why? Because the demonstration of healing externally was manifesting what was going on internally in the person's heart. And again, what does Jesus say? You're not defiled by anything that goes into your mouth. You're defiled by what comes out of your mouth because it's coming from the heart. Where's the source of defilement? Where's the source of purity and sanctification? It's going to be indicated in the heart. What is the etiology of plagues? What is the cause and what is God doing? Because if you can't answer this question and you continue to think, as you have been raised to think in the world, that the etiology of all these different millions of diagnoses has to do with a cell, has to do with a mutation, has to do with a virus, all of these other things. Yeah, those things might be implicated, but it doesn't mean it's the etiology. It doesn't mean that that's the thing causing it. And if you know that God is sovereign and that he is a God of intention, that he knows what he's doing, and that he has already established these things in order to speak to us, then the first question in your mind should be, what's God doing here? If that's truly in your heart, it should be, what is God doing here? I'm not going to speak as the world does. I'm not going to call it the flu, COVID, whatever other diagnosis they have for this cluster of symptoms. I'm not going to go there. Because if I go there, then I'm going to start speaking on their authority about other things, such as the treatments, the doctors, the specialists, the research. And that's going to be the authority on which I believe, not God's word. You know, some of you, I believe, are afraid to think this way, are afraid to believe in this way because you think it's foolish. You think that the world is going to look at you and say that you're foolish. Who cares? I'm here on a podcast speaking foolish things all day long. Have some courage. Put your faith where your mouth is. I've put my entire reputation and career on the line to speak the foolish things. And it's not for my benefit because I could just, speak this way on my own. I'm doing it for your benefit. God has raised me to do this for your benefit. And many of you are being cowards about it. You don't want to speak as God speaks. You don't want to believe as God believes, or you don't want to be caught believing as God believes, as God has taught. If you don't love the truth, you're going to be handed over to deception. That's what the word tells us. If you don't love the truth, you will be handed over to deception. If you speak on any other authority but the authority of God, there's no truth in you. Do you get what the word says about these things? And so it's not just something that you're doing to please God, although you should be concerned about pleasing God. But this is essential. It's essential for you to be speaking as the light of the world, as one who actually believes in what God has established. And if you are speaking incorrectly regarding etiology, you're not going to have any understanding about what is needed in order for you to heal. If you think that you have mental illness and physical illness and emotional illness, and you don't get that what's happening is that your soul is manifesting the dilemma, the spiritual dilemma in your emotions, in your body, in your thoughts, and that you have been designed so that your soul would do that. That way you can know what God is dealing with you on. If you don't understand that, you're not going to understand the causes, the reasons why God has sent certain things in your life. And if you don't understand the causes or the reasons why God has sent certain things in your life, you won't know what to do with it. And I'll tell you what happens is that people start getting surgeries and procedures and taking medications and all of these other things, deferring to idols to do these things, to tell them what to do in order to send away what God has sent, in order to medicate what God has sent in order to deal with you. Now you're engaging in breaking down the temple that's meant for God, deferring to idols, and spurning God's ministry. So what you see repeatedly with people who are doing this is that they may have had some sort of surgery or chemo or radiation or whatever it is that that medicine is doing to them, and medicine gets rid of one thing, but now they're 10 times worse in every other area. Their temple is completely broken down and can't recover. And now they're having other issues, and God is sending more judgment. If you're being dealt with by God, I want you to consider changing your perspective about it. I'm not upset that God has sent me this set of symptoms this week. I actually rejoice in it because I delight in the fear of the Lord. I know what he's talking to me about. I know that he sent this. I know that I'm not going to take a pill or any other tincture or herb to make it go away. I'm not going to loathe his discipline because I know that if he's dealing with me, that's because I'm loved, that's because I'm his. And we need to learn how to have that perspective. Etiology matters. It is important that you have a correct understanding of where these things come from and why they are being sent. That they are being sent. They didn't just happen. Your body, your design is not malfunctioning. It's working quite well, actually. You need only perceive what God has already established regarding etiology. I hope this is helpful. Comment below if you have any questions. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.